Welcome to Trinity Corps, where we discuss identity and the meaningful experiences that have shaped us. The stories that you will hear are not so much about the things we have done and achieved, but the people and events that make us who we are. This project is produced by Andrew Esqueda and Betsy Swetenburg, supported and funded by the Fuller Youth Institute.
Well, Hailey, I'm so happy we're having this conversation. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, me too.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. So who are you?
My name is Hailey Brown. I'm a senior at Walton High School. And the only after-school activity I have right now is taking pictures for the swim team.
Oh, that's
Just started,
neat.
yeah.
Like during meets?
During meets, they're so long. But it's okay.
The meets are so long.
Yeah, like 4 hours.
Yeah, they are. Yes, that's what I remember my kids in swim team has lots of time in between the actual swimming. Yeah. So, well, I'm Krysia Waldron, and I am the mother of 3 kids, and I have a husband, Blair, and we all live pretty close to where you live with your family, up in East Cobb. And we met each other here at Trinity doing this Story Corps project.
Yeah, just when did that even start?
Like a month ago, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. So one of the sort of core themes around this conversation that we're having is identity. So one of the ways to think about identity is sort of just the way we've answered that question with these social identities. And for better or for worse, another social identity of mine, or it's a professional identity, is as an organizational psychologist. And it turns out identity was one of my big topics of interest in graduate school and finishing my dissertation. So you and I have talked a little bit about the way that there's sort of like the surface level role identities, like senior at Walton or mother of children or whatever. And then there are some deeper ways we can think about ourselves. So if you think about the parts of you that aren't are part of a role of what you do, of more of who you are, what comes to mind? Who are you on that next layer underneath?
I think just like immediately under. I'm a very creative person. I have to have ways to express that. I have to have some sort of outlet, or I get kind of like stir crazy almost.
Yeah. Can you feel it, like that energy ramping up?
Yeah.
Needing something to do with the energy?
Like I had pretty long nails, and they had grown out, and I had SNS on, so I couldn't like cut them. And I'm just like obsessed with playing guitar. It's one of my favorite things to do. And after like 3 weeks of not being able to play at all, I just rushed to the nail salon. I was like, you have to get these things off of me. Like, I have to play.
You have to make music.
Yeah.
You can just feel it. That's amazing. I did not know that yet about you.
Or like school has been busy. But my friend and I have this fashion started as a blog. And for the past month, we haven't had any photo shoots with anybody, or we've been like upcycling clothes that we've thrifted. And there's been none of that. And we both got coffee yesterday, and we're like, we have got to do something for a Stampede.
Right. Yes.
So it's driving me absolutely nuts.
Tell people how to find it if they're listening to us in this interview.
Our blog is stampede.style. That's the URL.
.style.
And then that's also the Instagram, and the YouTube is linked on the blog.
Awesome. I can't wait to go find it. So, we've talked about the fact that I am really comfortable in the position of asking questions. It is so much harder to answer questions, but the point of this was for both of us to answer questions. So I'm laughing because I'm like, I realize now that I need to also answer the questions I'm throwing at you to take my own medicine. Let's see. So underneath those kind of easy to claim identities, I would say that I love to travel and don't have a ton of opportunity to do it in the way that I used to, because back to, the 3 kids part.
Right.
But I love to travel. I love new things, like almost anything new, like new movies, new music. I'm going to see this really unusual artist tonight. Her name is King Princess. Have you ever heard of
Oh
her?
my gosh, yes, I love King Princess.
You
Are you
do?
kidding?
Well, there's a show tonight at the Tabernacle. It's a Sunday night. It's a school night.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be really late.
A lot of my friends are going.
They are?
Yeah.
Oh, fun. So I've never seen her before. Don't know a whole ton about her except I've been just listening to her music. So just new. I'm like, there's in fact of the kind of big 5 personality characteristics. One of them is openness to experience. And so we all kind of vary on this one. Like it can be really high and like I'm describing, just get super motivated by brand new stuff and experiencing something for the first time. And then there are people who are a lot lower and they're more kind of, they get happier around security and stability and knowing what to expect. So anyway, so openness, and so that's probably like also the travel, is like a new place or a new thing to do. Okay, so then we've talked about categorical identities of sort of going to school or having a professional identity and kind of our family roles. And then we talked about a little bit about personality and traits and kind of who we are underneath that. Can you go even a layer deeper? What would be underneath that part of kind of being creative and those parts
like
of you?
what
It is hard.
What would that be? Like what's an example of something?
Well, I mean, one of the ways to think about it is how closely we identify as children of God, like little spirits. I mean, that would maybe be one of the deepest levels.
Well, in terms of faith, in the past, like almost a year, have grown a lot closer to God, or like my faith has gotten stronger. Before that, it just, I don't know, never really clicked for me. It didn't feel like something that I necessarily needed to in my life, and now it's something I kind of grasp to a lot of the time. January is when my friend passed, and since then, I think it's been my outlet to feel close to her. And she was extremely religious, and actually in her last few months, she wanted to be a pastor actually, and people would come and visit her. People like her family didn't even know, and she would preach to them, and they would have a come to Jesus moment. So I was really inspired.
And that was happening in a private way between her and the people.
I mean, these people would come into her bedroom, very intimate.
Did she pastor you in that way in her last few months?
No, actually, we hardly ever talked about faith. But it was something that you could just feel being around her. And it was something, she did not fear death at all. As soon as she was diagnosed with cancer, it was something that she immediately said she felt chosen for, something that she could use to spread the word of God. And so in her sickest time, she was like, if God's ready to take me, I'm ready to go. And it was that peace that I think I saw in her that is where I saw just God through her.
Yeah. It's like the realest description of witnessing I can think of. And she embodied something that you sensed and now are connected to her through. And it's through God. That's incredible. So sometimes when people die young, we get angry. Did you feel any of that kind of anger?
I 100% did. I went through lots of different phases, especially in the first like 2 months afterwards. The first couple weeks, it was just kind of like a sad or emptiness. That I don't know. It was a really dark period, and then all of a sudden, it was like it never happened, and it just didn't feel real at all. Because at first, I was immediately surrounded by her family, and in her room, her absence was I was very aware of it. And then I just kind of had to push it away and like not deal with the grief because I had to go back to school, and I had to, like, life wasn't going to stop for me, you know? And then the anger hit. Like, I saw her less and less the more sick she got. Like, she came to my 17th birthday party. She couldn't, I mean, she had to be like wheeled into my house. And after that, she like wouldn't let me see her again. She's like, I want you to remember me, you know, being able to get up and hug you, being able to, she wasn't in a place where that was how she wanted me to remember her. So I didn't see her after my birthday, and she passed January 3rd. So I totally forgot the question that I'm answering.
So did I. Anger, I think.
Oh, anger, yes.
Because she had such a generous, just a generosity around where she was in her life, and the idea that she wouldn't get the time that she would have expected or that her loved ones would have wanted for her.
I was angry after, like, when I started having to deal with it again. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. I hadn't seen her, and then things started happening where I was like, she should be here for this, she should be here for that. And I planned a little fundraiser that I hosted at Trinity, actually. In May, they went to the Childhood Cancer Development and Therapy Center. They've been giving her clinical trials in her last few months, and that became a really good distraction for me. I had something to like throw myself into that was involved with her that I could work on. And after that, I think the anger kind of came back. I think I'm still processing it in a lot of different ways.
When you say January, and I'm thinking about your birthday turning 17, that must have been last January.
Yeah.
So it hasn't
past.
quite been a year yet. Yeah.
Feels like it's been a long time.
Yeah. You were describing the way that her witnessing that kind of love and acceptance and just grace has helped you to grow in your faith since she passed. And either you said or I heard or I imagined that you also feel close to her in that way.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit about that part?
Well, I have this journal that she gave me a long time ago, but I really jump back and forth between all of my journals. I wish I could stay in one so I could go back and read them in order, but I started writing my journal entries in that journal to her. And the first time I went to her house after she passed, her mom gave me her daily devotional book, and she was like, I need you to do these. And so I did those. I was given her Bible that she had written all in, and I found this book where she'd like written little sermons and things. So faith was like a lot of what she left behind. So it has kind of just become a way that because it makes her feel like she's still around, you know, where I can feel her presence in times when I can like have a kind of a spiritual experience, either like playing music or reading things she left. So I don't do it all the time, and I don't necessarily think of her when I'm praying, but there are times when I can like actually sit down and like breathe and think. If I concentrate on it enough, that's when I feel close.
And it sort of sounds like, and obviously you always stop me if I say something it's not quite right, but I'm hearing in what you're sharing this way in which something, the passing of a loved one, can be a spark for something else, like deepening your faith. And maybe as your faith deepens, you're connected to her. And as you're connected to her, your faith develops. Like there's this like kind of beautiful dance between sort of your experience of her and your memory of her, and how you're growing as a woman with a strong faith and curiosity and kind of love for God. Is that like...
No, that's completely, it has definitely been sort of a chain reaction.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So one of the things you and I have talked about in these last few weeks is sort of the way in which you're in this like really precious and tender time of life as things are really getting like opened up, and you know, as a senior in high school, you're thinking about big questions about where to go to school and how to focus your, you know, professional energy or your career and where you want to live. And that's such a like this like amazing time of looking back on all that you've done and also looking forward at the woman you want to become. And so, you know, one of those phrases people love to use, and I love it, is that the only constant is change. You know, that we're all always changing or evolving in some way, and things are going on. So how is your life changing these days?
A lot more than I think I allow myself to even think about. I have these moments where sometimes I'll either feel like really old or I'll feel super, super young, where I'm like, this shouldn't be happening yet. Like, this isn't right. Especially like when I think about like the people who were seniors last year, and like even just the 1 year difference, like they seem so old. They look so old. My whole grade, like we look like we're 11 years old. Like we're not ready to be leaving.
You don't look 11 to me.
Well, maybe it's just
I have an 11-year-old, so you know just what that looks like.
But last night I actually got into my first school.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations!
Thank
That's
you.
a really big deal.
It was my safety.
Yeah, that's great.
Iowa
You're safe.
State University. I have at least one school.
Wonderful.
But it was weird because it was an immediate response. Like I clicked submit. They accept 87% of their students. I don't know how it went through computer fast enough for them to like make sure I was a real person.
Yes.
And like check my scores, and I don't know. But I
Like,
clicked
you're
submit. And then a little screen popped up. It was like, congratulations, your admission today. I was like, there's no way. Like, there's no, this is a glitch. Like, something's wrong. But then, like, I got an email 2 hours later that said, congratulations. You will receive
Wasn't a mistake.
an official letter of acceptance in the mail within the next week.
That's amazing.
And then they had this video that they clearly send to all of their students. It's like a little acceptance video. It's supposed to be like a breaking news CNN report, and they somehow like pasted my name into like all of these things. Like my name dropped on an Iowa State banner in front of the school.
That's hilarious.
It was so cute. But that was kind of weird because I've gotten to the point where I'm like accepting that I'm writing college applications. Like I've submitted like 3 plus my SUNY application. So those I was just kind of doing. It was like, what I'm like, this isn't college. Like I don't know what I'm doing.
Just going through the motions.
I at least had until December to like still not really think about it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't in anymore. I was like, I'm finding out in December, and then just like that happened and kind of shook me up.
Yes, it's like becoming very real.
Yeah.
When you see your name pasted on a banner.
Yeah. Really super official. I just
I love it.
I guess college is just the big thing. All of my friends are kind of realizing that, or at least my close ones, were all looking at completely different places. And especially like, I don't want to jinx anything, New York.
Yes.
If I end up in New York,
Yes.
I'll be home like only for holidays. And before, like junior year, I was like FIT, like, and it's still my top, but I was completely like, not looking back. I was like, ready to move to the city, all these things. But the closer I get to it, just the scarier and the bigger it is. And I'm like, I'm a baby. Like, I can't just go live on my own and not know anybody. And so I'm really conflicted right now.
Well, because both are true, right?
Yeah.
We can really want something, and like you can know that you have the strength and the determination and the resilience to go to a big foreign city like Manhattan and make a place for yourself there. And you also know that there's a part of you that is going to find it really hard and maybe lonely. And I still remember I went to graduate school in New York. We talked about this a little bit. So I was, 5 years older. And so I really felt overconfidently like I was ready, So I think being in tune to the part of you that feels like a baby, to use your words, which are perfect, is actually in many ways really helpful, because then your eyes wide open.
Yeah.
I really felt like, I'm sure there was a part of me that knew it would be hard. I mean, I'm not, I can be realistic enough to think that way. But I don't remember that feeling as much as I just remember the excitement of going and like packing my suitcase and shipping boxes and getting ready for all that. But the reality of living in a city away from your loved ones is that it is like super exciting and has loneliness embedded in it too. That actually experience, it's funny, we haven't talked about this and I'm just remembering it right now, but that time of living in New York City for graduate school was one of the times where I felt the closest to God. Really? Because it was a lonely, there's a lot of fun. Like I could tell, how you can tell a story one way and you can tell it the opposite way, and both versions are true. Yeah. It's just sort of, even sometimes my husband will ask me how something went, and I'll say, do you want the like snarky version or the positive, optimistic version? And he'll say, I want both. And then you have to decide which one you want first, because they're both there. So there's so much fun to be had, and I learned so much. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But the moments of loneliness I felt were profound. Yeah. And it's sometimes in those places that you connect to the Spirit in a way that we can get distracted from when our needs are all filled up. So for what it's worth, I think recognizing the ambivalence in you of like the desire and the fear is really healthy and will serve you well as you prepare for it all.
I hope so.
Okay, so one of the ways that your life is changing right now is in sort of the physical sense of like at some point you're going to be packing up your favorite things and your clothes, and you're going to be physically moving yourself to a college. Might be Iowa State, might be New York City. Yeah. We don't know yet. It's too early to know. Can you think of any other ways that you feel yourself evolving as you kind of get into this place of life?
I think in the past couple months, I've had a lot of interesting self-discovery. I have just recently started treatment for my eating disorder, and so it's been bad since the treatment has started, and my therapist told me sometimes it just like comes out at the hardest when you're trying to get rid of it, because it knows like your brain and your body like aren't ready to let it go. And so I'm realizing the parts of myself that need strengthening before I'm on my own. And that's been difficult because I've been pushing them away for so long and trying to just ignore them, but I can't do that because they will come out really loud when I'm in a lonely or hard place
Yes.
once I moved out. But also looking back a lot on like experiences that I have had, and I've been doing a lot of like going through. I found a journal of mine from 5th grade. And so
I just recently threw away my journal from 5th grade, and I bet yours is a lot deeper than mine. Mine was like, I have a crush on insert boy's name.
No, yeah.
What did
Would
you
be
find
like
in
that
your
and
journal?
like crushes, and I like drew like a date I thought I was gonna have, and it's mostly me like deciphering through my just awful handwriting.
Yeah.
So ugly.
Mine was really bubbly.
Mine just looks like a really messy boy. Like I don't know what I was doing. My grip changed so much because my dad wanted me to write like with my index finger first, but I grip it. I can't do it without actually gripping.
So interesting.
So yeah, my handwriting has also been through
A change.
a couple of transformations. Yeah, I don't know. I guess just this year is a lot about reflection and trying to stabilize myself before I go through even more of a personal development. Because I'd like to be able to kind of study myself before I end up totally discovering a new part of myself within the next year. So
there's this part of me that hears you say that and thinking like, yes, that's so wise, like stability and kind of almost like preparation for an adventure you're about to take, and you sort of want to have all your resources in check and your health in the best possible place it could be. And you were describing sort of before about deciding to face your eating disorder and getting treatment for it as like having not wanted to look at that for a while, and now you've got this goal of like a big adventure coming up you want to be ready for, so it makes sense to kind of do the work that you can do. But there's a part of you that is like, no.
yeah.
Even in the work I do, which is not around health issues, but I will often tell people this thing that you want to work on will probably get worse as we start our work together before it gets better. And in some ways that can be really helpful because you can start to really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Aware. You can become really aware, and when you're ready to look at something complicated with more awareness, that experience of it increasing in intensity gives us a lot of data to work with. We get to really look at it.
Right. Yeah.
So on the one hand, I think it's so wise, like seeking some kind of stability before a big change or a big adventure. And then another part of me is like, oh my gosh, is like, when have I ever felt stable?
No, yeah. Like when I say stable, oh gosh, it's just kind of like
I want that too. Please, like, can we make me stable too in the meantime? But as a goal, it's a great goal. I love it. Maybe you'll reach it and then you can teach us. Like,
oh gosh, maybe.
It's like, I think sometimes you can look back on your life and see that there were places of relative stability and then places of a lot of growth and change.
Yeah. Like
the ebbing and the flowing, and that there's a big flow that's going to come up. That's really exciting and wonderful. So one of the things you and I have talked about is sort of the way in which evolving identities can lead us to let identities go, and I was telling you, and I did not get the quote all ready for us today, but I was telling you that there's Father Richard Rohr has written about, and lots of others have written about, the concept of allowing your false selves to die, or like embracing the death of any false self that we have. And that even, I'm fully in midlife now, like I'm past all these sort of building points of building, identifying the career I wanted, and then doing the work necessary to create it, and now being fully in that place, and thinking about the kind of family I wanted, and finding the right partner in order to have our beautiful children, and like get that all stabilized. But that even after we do all those things, we still, if we're growing, find ourselves shedding off of the parts of ourselves that actually, when we can look with awareness, weren't authentic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you've had any experiences like that yet, of letting false self go, or shedding identities that you realized in some way weren't true to who you are?
I think I'm having trouble determining whether this was like a false identity or I hadn't really grown into myself yet.
Yeah.
I know that I had periods being at Westminster in middle school that I sort of created a false identity, I think, because there was like a person I wanted to be, and there was a person that I was, and I tried my best to like grow and turn into the person that I wanted to be, but like that just wasn't who I was.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I kind of plastered on somebody that I thought was just kind of pleasing. Like I've always been a people pleaser.
Yes.
And I didn't want to stand out in any sort of way. I was so shy. And so if I had a false part of me that I've shed, it's probably that shyness and that like protective coat that I tried to put around myself, because it was very restricting. And once I went to Walton, and in my second semester just had an experience that kind of pulled me out of my shell, I almost immediately shed that false self because it had been weighing me down.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's the only.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one. And there's this, like, I'm having this reaction of I'm so glad that you felt the weight and that you felt ready to let it go, because I've met you, of course, since the like heavy cloak you let go, and it's hard to even imagine a time when you were, what would be the right word, like so reserved that it would have been hard to know you if it was kind of like a the shyness. Sometimes shyness is just exactly who a person is, but it sounds like it just wasn't the layer on top of who you really are. And I've experienced you as being so open and like really wise and mature, and like an easy to start to know person that I just feel selfishly grateful that you let that one go so young. Some of us, are still letting that one go. It can be hard to let shyness go, because it can be like a little bit of a protective layer, as long as we're kind of holding our true selves deeper, then we think we're not going to get hurt as much, because if you let the big cloak go, your real self is just right there.
No, yeah.
Right
exactly.
there. No, I think that's a really, really good one.
We need to talk about how you've evolved, and then the second and third question also.
Oh, well, the shedding is such a great word. There's this book I love, and anyone who is in a place in life where they think they are looking for a change, can get a lot out of it. It's written by an organizing expert. Her name is Julie Morgenstern, and the book is called Shed, SHED, and it stands for something. Now, it's been a while, so I can't remember what the SHE and D stand for, but it's an acronym for something. But the point of the book, which I picked up years ago as I was feeling burdened by just, I was honestly just feeling burdened by stuff. I think I would have picked this book up probably after my third child was born. I'm just guessing. I don't remember exactly the circumstances. At the time, I had either 2 or 3 kids, something like that. And we were living in the house that I thought would be our like forever type house. We built it, we designed it, we built it, then we furnished it, and I just sort of like imagined this big life in this big house with all this furniture and all the entertaining stuff and the gift wrapping closet and you can just like imagine just all this and the Christmas decorations and all the clothes and just all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was starting to feel what I would have said at the time was I just feel like we need to get more organized. Like if somebody asks me for, I don't know, like what's a common household thing? Like, do you have a safety pin or whatever? I think, well, there are like 6 places a safety pin could be in our house, or a pair of scissors, or just whatever. So I picked up this book, but what she does in this book is she talks about essentially identity as a way to approach how your physical, and the book is actually more about it's physical things, but also your time commitments and your relationships, and sort of it's very much a life design kind of holistic philosophy. But the first part of it has you go through an exercise where you're identifying sort of what do you want out of your life at this point. And I thought it was brilliant, and I decided that what I wanted was a base camp to be able to like have this nurturing, loving center in order to then go out into the world and do interesting things and, serve people or do whatever work, I was going to be doing and raise my kids out in the world, but have this loving place to come home to. And I wanted it to function just like a base camp would, where it's serene, it's comforting, but it's just as what you need. It's like nothing more than what you really just need, because you don't carry everything out into the bush, you just carry out what you really need. So anyway, so that was like my orienting philosophy, and it took years. I mean, I don't have the specifics because I can't remember when I read this book. Like, I don't know who my kids were at that time. But it took years, but what my husband and I eventually did is sold the house and gave away all the stuff. I mean, we went from a lot to just what we needed. Even my wedding china.
Wow.
Gave away my wedding china. Like our Christmas decorations we collected over, 10 years or whatever. I mean, so I guess I'm in my 5th grade journal, and when I say this next kind of stuff, people are like, you're going to regret that. And they're probably right, but at this point I don't regret it. My high school yearbooks and all this stuff that felt like it was weighing me down. So we've come out of that place, and now we're in our base camp. It's like you came to dinner last week, and it's very, like, I don't know if spare is the right word, because there are 5 people living in this house, and so there's plenty of like, clutter around, but it's very simple. I guess I could use that word probably accurately. And I don't have now, like, I think I had 6 or 7 sets of dishes, for like a fancy dinner party and a casual dinner party and a barbecue and a this. And now I think I did keep the barbecue set because that just seems useful. But so now I guess I have 2, but the really like the impact of the story for me is that I thought it was the stuff. I thought it was the house was too big and we had too many decorations. And what I've realized now that we've made all this big transition is that it's probably more significant than that. And it probably also involves, how we spend our time and who we spend it with, and sort of the whether you have somebody for dinner because you feel like you should, or whether you have someone for dinner because you really want to see them. And, I sort of think about this too from the perspective as a sociologist, where I did my PhD in a sociology program. And so I think about the process of socialization, and that there's this really healthy part of us that looks to please people, as you were describing. It's a really healthy, pro-social, like good community member thinks about, like, what do people expect of me and how can I meet their expectations? And then at different lucky points in your life, maybe you get to these places where you can think, okay, like maybe I did that or parts of that. And now what is it that my soul is telling me is right for me? And it may not please people, or it may not please some people. And if you would have told me when I was 17 that at age 41 I would still be working with this question, I would have thought it was really depressing. Like, can't this get solved a little sooner in life than 40, in your 40s? And there were times in my life where I thought I was solving this kind of tension.
Yeah.
And anyway, now I realize that it's, like there are so many layers to this puzzle of who we are as unique beings and pieces of spirit and children of God, and who we are as humans who are in relationship with each other and seeking to serve one another, and and like where do we meet our needs versus where do we enact a life that we think is going to meet other people's needs. I mean, all of that is such a precious bundle. And I'm still working it out. So I really hope that is not depressing.
No, honestly, like the idea of constantly transforming is kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. I think because it's something that I fear for myself as I get older is getting stuck or like stagnant in one place, or not even just like physically, but just like who I am. Mm-hmm. Because I've talked to a lot of different adults that seem to be caught up in a lot of things that aren't who they are, so they're not really, I feel like, necessarily living out their own lives. They're kind of living for the purpose of like their job or the people around them. Mm-hmm. And then, hopefully they'll have a time where they can rediscover themselves and kind of, I think it's really special to be able to be in tune with yourself like that. And so my hope is that I'm always
I love it.
transforming.
I was thinking as you were describing that, I have like a lot of compassion for people who hold tight to an idea of themselves. Mm-hmm. I sometimes encounter people like that in the work I do, which is focused on leadership. And so I will often get people for whom their career is very important. And they'll be encountering something that is puzzling them or is frustrating them. And so they're kind of looking for someone to help support their development. And that's sort of how we get connected. Mm-hmm. But so it's not uncommon to encounter a place in someone's life where they are really attached to a certain outcome or to a certain conception of themselves, or to the way a relationship with someone should be, or sort of something like that. Like it's almost like it's really common, so I don't mean to make this sound like it's pathological, but it's like a denial of a reality. Like there's some kind of reality that there is a resistance to. And so I know one of the reasons why we all, and especially if we're in a place where we're resisting a new reality, why we stay in that place is because to open oneself up to the unknown is really exciting if you're, high on curiosity and openness to experience. But even then, it's still terrifying. Like, it sounds so ridiculous to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway for the purpose of full authenticity. Selling that house left me feeling like I almost felt like I didn't know who I was.
Oh no, sure.
I mean, it's where all my babies came home. Yeah. I dreamed it up. I drew it on a piece of paper. My dad built it. I mean, it was such an embodiment of who I thought I wanted to be in the world. Yeah. That letting the house go left me feeling really raw. And I hadn't cried maybe in, I don't know, I can't say years because I'm sort of pretty emotional person. So tears come every so often, but I hadn't cried. Yeah. That full on cry. probably hadn't hard cried in a long, long time. And then we sold that house, and I was like driving around and looking up at the gorgeous sky. The sky that spring was just probably was no different than it ever is any spring, but I was noticing it in a new way and just hard crying for that false self that I was leaving behind. And this idea of like, we don't know and at that time we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know if we were going to build another house or what. And I mean, it's like, this is such a silly example because everyone was fine. Like, we didn't have sickness or, like this was not a real problem. But even in the form of a not real problem, it felt like an opening of something unknown.
Yeah, no, that's scary. Did you immediately upon, like, when you said you had your hard cry, was that like fear or regret, or how?
Yeah.
Did you know that it was the right decision still?
Yeah, it was grief.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was crying for the person I thought I wanted to be, and I had realized I didn't want that anymore.
Yeah.
So I personally haven't felt regret about that decision, but I have felt a lot of grief around the transition and being in a new place where things are still feeling in some ways unsettled. Like we're still kind of building up now this part of the life we want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not all about, a house and furniture, but those are the kind of embodied thing, like the symbols maybe.
Yeah.
So I think the tears were grief, and I still feel, it's like, have you ever felt the kind of, you can feel both grateful for knowing something important and almost wistful for the time when you didn't know it yet.
Yeah. No, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Because like before you know it, you're not responsible to it.
Yeah.
But once you know something important, then most of us, we certainly can't unknow it. And we also want to hold ourselves accountable to the truth we now know.
Mm-hmm.
But that is hard to do. It's hard to do that, to make it manifest.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a client this past week, or it might have been the week before, use a phrase I'd never heard before. And he said, "You can't unring a bell." And I thought he was meeting it in the context of, I was asking a group to share and to be vulnerable. And I was asking the group, what would you need from each other to feel ready to kind of go to a potentially vulnerable or open place? And so he shared that metaphor as a way to say, I don't really want to get vulnerable.
Yeah.
Once I ring the bell, you can't all unhear that bell I have just rung.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since he used that phrase, I've been thinking so much about it, because when you think about the sound of a bell, it's a beautiful sound. Right?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't we want everyone's bells to be ringing? Like that's sort of like my bias is like, please ring your bell. Like, I want to hear what yours sounds like. Because it sounds different from mine and it sounds different from hers. And I'm grateful that once we ring it, we get to hear it. But it's scary.
Yeah, no, it is. That's really scary. Especially if not everybody's going to be as vulnerable as you are.
Yeah. Which is true. Always.
Group settings are difficult. I'm still in the awkward years, so.
Well, welcome. I don't know if that gets, we just had a Sunday school class this morning where we were talking about what gets in the way of taking the perspective of somebody else. And it's material I teach really often, so I'm sort of familiar with kind of how a group will respond to it. And I was thinking, like, we're at church where things are more intimate than they maybe are at work, or, and I guess that's really the context. Work or an academic setting is where I would have had other experiences. But it was so funny, Hailey. We were at this part where I'm asking, where do you all see evidence or like the experience of the inability to take someone's perspective? Like, what comes to mind does this happen to you? Do you ever feel like you're having a hard time taking someone's experience or they're having a hard time taking your perspective? And how does that come up in your lives? And at that point, usually people will talk about like home or their, loved ones or their spouses or their parents or the Thanksgiving dinner table and politics comes up or something. But this morning, nobody went there. It was a very intellectual conversation around the concept of why people don't take each other's perspectives. And I think it was it's that it's vulnerable to start talking about where we ourselves fall short.
Yeah.
Or where we have felt misunderstood by somebody else. So even at church, in Sunday school, it's hard for people to feel comfortable ringing their bells. Because they worry what it's going to sound like.
Like in youth group, we will sit and Andrew's line is always, that wasn't a rhetorical question. And we've grown up together. Like some of these people, I came to Trinity when I was like 6. No, that's not true. I don't know. I was young. Young enough to not remember. And there are pictures of all of us together in first, second, third grade, like 5th grade bell choir. Now we're all like turning 18 together and we still can't have a discussion about something that's not just kind of baseline, like something meaningful. Or when we do, it's in an even closer setting. Like maybe just our grade or just the girls or when we're at like a retreat or something, we've all been like staying in the same place for a couple days.
What does it feel like when you get there? Like whether it's because you're on a retreat and so the physical boundaries are more intimate and you've been together so much, or if you've got a smaller group that feels ready to go somewhere tender. What does it feel like to you?
What's super nice, I think it's almost like a relief, like a moment of closeness that we've been waiting for. Just especially since we've all known each other. I think a lot of us go into these discussions in like youth group and we have like an urge to be close to each other, and I think that's something people long for. Like you want relationships and you want to be able to be vulnerable, but we need somebody to take that first step. And if they don't, and even sometimes some people will talk. Like we have people that I'm not really afraid to jump in if it's not something like super personal most of the time. Some people still don't feel comfortable.
I love how the first thing that came to your mind was relief. And you said something like, it's something that we're waiting for, like longing for and waiting for. And so when we get to a place of authenticity and openness and vulnerability, we feel relieved by it. I agree. I feel that way too. I feel like what we're doing right now feels like that. Because we both I talked more about it than you did, but when we first started talking about this conversation, I had a lot of questions for Andrew about, what if we get into a part of the conversation where, like I know how to be real, I know how to be authentic, but you don't know where you're going to go when you're in that place. It's sort of an unknown territory sometimes. You just kind of start down a path and it feels rich and it feels interesting, but what if I asked him explicitly, what if we end up in a place and we are like realizing we're not okay with this being on YouTube or publicly accessible? And he assured us like, well, we can do some editing. But I think that is like, even the two of us who are in this place of wanting to be a part of something that is around kind of deeply understanding each other and storytelling in a significant kind of way. At the point at which this became real, I was like, but what if I change my mind?
Yeah.
So there's that like compassionate, experience of like, I know what it feels like to want to unring the bell.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think something really interesting about just our group that came together for this project was like, I walked in on the first day and I was like nervous. I was like, I don't know who's gonna be here. Like, I had really received just like no information except for like, will you be in this? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I read Andrew's text at school and I was like, and that's all about like whatever. And I remember immediately walking in, I saw Lindsay, who was familiar, and I just sat next to Lindsay and I was like, this is my comfort. Like, there's somebody here I know. And I think that first meeting we had was one of our longest.
Yeah.
And I think that was really cool because once everyone had at least spoken for the first time, it was like we were all standing outside of the water and we're just like ready to dive in. Once someone made the first jump, we were all like in it with them.
Yeah.
And our group grew close in just a couple of Sundays.
Yeah.
Because we jumped in sharing such intimate things about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really
Andrew led us there.
Yeah, it's been special.
And in like a really graceful and inviting sort of way.
Yeah.
I'm really glad for it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to know you.
Oh my gosh, yeah, me too. I think it's funny kind of how perfect our pairing worked out.
I think so too.
Because not only like
I thought
at first
thinking that,
it was like we just lived close and like that was cool, but getting to know you through this experience, like I feel I like see a lot of like myself and also like things that I want for myself in you, and so this has been really, really.
That is such a compliment.
Really
Thank you.
awesome.
It was like such an honor to hear anything close to that. Thank you so much. Okay, Hailey. Well, this isn't the end for us, but it might be the end of our interview.
I think it is.